When Maxwell Stone fired Zara Wilson, he thought he was getting rid of a problem. Instead, he created his own downfall. With nothing but a flash drive and her brilliant mind, Zara is about to turn her humiliation into the corporate comeback of a lifetime. But in the cutthroat world of tech, victory comes with unexpected costs and secrets that could destroy everything she's fought to build. What begins as one woman's quest for justice will become a battle for the soul of a company, where the price of success might be higher than anyone imagined. Zara Wilson smoothed her blazer and checked her reflection in the lobby's shiny wall. Today was a big day. After 8 years at Platinum Tech, she was finally going to show CEO Maxwell Stone her new app idea. Her hands trembled a little as she gripped her tablet. This app could save the company millions of dollars. "You got this," she whispered to herself. The elevator climbed to the top floor. With each ding, Zara's heart beat faster. Floor 20, floor 21, floor 22. She had started as an intern on floor 3, making coffee and fixing paper jams in the printer. Now she ran the whole product team on floor 17. But today, she was headed to floor 25, the CEO's floor. The elevator doors slid open. Zara stepped onto plush carpet that felt like walking on clouds. The walls were lined with awards and photos of Maxwell Stone shaking hands with famous people. "Ms. Wilson," said Janet, the CEO's assistant. "Mr. Stone can see you now." Zara nodded and walked toward the big glass door. Through it, she could see Maxwell at his desk. He was a tall man with silver hair and a tan that never faded, even in winter. He didn't look up when she entered. "Sir, I have that presentation ready about the new app," Zara said. Maxwell glanced up. His blue eyes were cold. "Sit down, Wilson." Something in his voice made Zara's stomach twist. She sat in the leather chair across from his huge desk. "Sir, I think you're going to be impressed with—" "We're making some changes." Maxwell cut her off. "Budget cuts. Trimming the fat." Zara blinked. "I understand. My app will actually help with cost-cutting by— Your position has been eliminated," Maxwell said flatly. He slid a folder across the desk. "Effective today." The words hit Zara like a slap. "What?" "It's nothing personal. Just business." Maxwell finally looked directly at her. "We're restructuring the product team, going in a different direction." Zara's mind raced. This made no sense. Just last month, her team had delivered a project ahead of schedule and under budget. Their numbers were the best in the company. "Sir, my team has the highest performance metrics in the building. Our last 3 products boosted company revenue by 30%. Maxwell sighed like she was a child who couldn't understand simple math. "The decision's been made, Wilson. HR will walk you through the paperwork. You'll get 2 weeks severance." 2 weeks. After 8 years. Zara felt heat rising in her face. "Can I ask why? My performance reviews have all been excellent. I've never—" "It's not about performance." Maxwell checked his watch. "It's about fit. The company is evolving. Some people evolve with it, some don't." Through the glass walls, Zara could see her co-worker Brendan laughing with the vice president. Brendan had been hired 6 months ago. He had half her experience and missed deadlines regularly. Last week, he and Maxwell had played golf together. "Is Brendan's position being eliminated too?" Zara asked quietly. Maxwell's face hardened. "Actually, Brendan's being promoted to head of product development. Your team will report to him now." The room seemed to tilt. "He's taking my job? But he just joined the company. He has the right vision for where we're going." Maxwell stood. "Up. Janet will help you clean out your desk. Company policy says you need to be out of the building within an hour. Zara sat frozen. This couldn't be happening. Last night, she had been working until midnight, perfecting her presentation. She'd been so excited about showing Maxwell how her app could track efficiency and find ways to save money. She'd even practiced her pitch in front of her mirror. "I'd like to speak with HR about this," Zara said, finding her voice. "They have all the paperwork ready. You can sign on your way out." Maxwell pressed a button on his desk. "Janet, please help Ms. Wilson with her exit process." The door opened. Janet stood there with an empty cardboard box. "I need to save my files," Zara said, standing up on shaky legs. "Your computer access has already been revoked," Maxwell said. "Standard procedure." Zara thought of all her work still on her company laptop. Years of ideas, projects in progress, and her new app design. "My personal items. Janet will escort you to collect them." The walk back to the elevator felt like a bad dream. People stared as she followed Janet. Some looked away quickly. Had everyone known this was coming except her? At her desk, Zara found her computer screen already dark. Her drawers had been emptied onto her desk. A coffee mug, some photos, a few pens, and a small plant. "I'll need your badge," Janet said, not unkindly. Zara unpinned it from her blazer. Her fingers touched something in her pocket. The flash drive. She had saved her app presentation on it last night, just in case something went wrong with the company network. She dropped the flash drive into her box while Janet wasn't looking. The HR meeting was a blur of papers and cold words. "Sign here and here. Initial here." 45 minutes after walking into Maxwell's office, Zara stood outside the Platinum Tech building with a small box in her arms. 8 years of her life packed away. A sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down, revealing Maxwell. "Nothing personal, Wilson. You're smart. You'll land on your feet." He nodded, as if he'd given her great advice. The window rolled up, and the car pulled away. Zara watched it disappear into traffic. A hot tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. On the bus ride home, she held the box on her lap. Inside was the flash drive with her brilliant app idea. The app Maxwell had never even looked at. She closed her fingers around it. This wasn't just a piece of plastic with some code. It was her future. A future that Maxwell Stone thought he could take away. "This isn't over," Zara whispered to herself as the city rolled by outside the window. Not by a long shot, but 3 weeks later, it felt very much over. Zara stared at her laptop screen, refreshing her email for the 5th time that hour. Nothing new, just like yesterday, and the day before that. Her apartment felt smaller now that she spent all day in it. Dishes piled in the sink. Takeout boxes cluttered the coffee table. She hadn't bothered to change out of her sweatpants in 2 days. The calendar on her wall was covered in red X marks, each one a day without a job offer. 14 interviews so far. 14 versions of "We'll call you." 0 calls back. Her phone buzzed. Zara lunged for it, nearly knocking over her cold coffee. "Hello?" she answered, trying to sound professional instead of desperate. "Ms. Wilson? This is Amanda from Green Valley Tech. About your interview yesterday." Zara held her breath. "We've decided to go with another candidate, but we'll keep your resume on file." "I understand," Zara said, though she didn't. "Thank you for letting me know." She ended the call and dropped her phone like it had burned her. 15 rejections now. Her laptop pinged with a news alert. She clicked it without thinking. Platinum Tech stock drops. 12% after poor quarterly results. the headline screamed. Below was a photo of Maxwell Stone leaving the company building, looking angry. The article mentioned restructuring and strategic layoffs, fancy words for firing people. Zara clicked through to Platinum's website. Their new product launch had been delayed. The one her team had been working on before she left. The one Brendan was now in charge of. She opened her banking app. The numbers made her stomach clench. Her savings were draining fast. Rent was due next week. She needed a job. Any job. Her phone rang again. This time it was her mom. "Baby, how are you holding up?" her mother asked. "I'm fine, Mom," Zara lied. "Had another interview yesterday. Went great." "That's wonderful. I knew they couldn't keep my smart girl down for long." Zara couldn't bear to tell her mother the truth. Not when Mom had bragged to everyone at church about her daughter, the big-shot tech executive. "How's Dad?" "Same as always. Working too hard. Won't slow down. He sends his love." After promising to call again soon, Zara hung up. She looked at the flash drive sitting on her desk. She'd been too angry to look at it since the firing. Too afraid it would just make her feel worse. Now she plugged it in, her app design loaded onto the screen. She'd named it Efficiency Pro. Simple, but it said what it did. The app could track how companies used time, energy, and money. It could spot waste and suggest fixes. Platinum Tech needed it badly, especially now. As Zara scrolled through her work, pride replaced her sadness. This was good. Really good. Maybe she could sell it to another company? Her phone rang again. "Hello? Zara? It's Darius." Darius Jones had been in the IT department at Platinum. They'd eaten lunch together sometimes. "Darius, how are you? How's everything there?" "Not good. More layoffs today. Whole marketing. Team is gone." Zara winced. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Place is falling apart without you." Darius lowered his voice. "That's not why I called. I found something weird. I was clearing old accounts from the system, and I checked your old computer." "What about it?" "Someone's been accessing your files." From the executive floor, Zara sat up straight. "What files?" "Project folders, mostly. That app you were working on? Efficiency Pro? They copied everything." Her blood ran cold. "When?" "Day after you left. And here's the thing. They just announced a new project yesterday. Guess what it's called?" "No. Platinum Efficiency. Looks exactly like your app, Zara. Maxwell's calling it his brainchild to save the company." The room seemed to spin. Maxwell had stolen her idea. The one he couldn't be bothered to look at when she tried to show him. That's my work," Zara stammered. "I know. And I thought you should know too. Be careful, though. They made us all sign new NDAs last week. I could get fired for telling you this." After Darius hung up, Zara sat in stunned silence. All. Those nights she'd worked late, all that research, all that code, stolen. She wanted to scream, to cry, to march back into Platinum Tech and expose Maxwell for the thief he was. But who would believe her? She had no proof except the flash drive, and Maxwell had an army of lawyers. She was just one unemployed black woman against a powerful white CEO. Her laptop pinged with an email alert. Probably another rejection. She clicked it open, ready for more bad news. The sender was unknown, just a string of random numbers and letters. The subject line made her freeze. "I know what Maxwell did." The message was just one line. "Let's talk. I can help you make him pay." Zara stared at the words, her heart pounding. Was this a trap? A joke? She hovered her cursor over the delete button, then stopped. Maybe this was her chance. Her way back in. She clicked reply. "Who are you?" Zara typed. "How do you know about Maxwell?" Her finger hovered over the send button. Was this smart? She didn't know who was on the other end. It could be a trick. But what did she have to lose? She hit send. The message disappeared into the internet. Zara paced her small apartment, checking her phone every few minutes. No response. Maybe it was a cruel joke. Or maybe her laptop pinged. New email. Greenway Coffee Shop, tomorrow, 10 a.m., corner booth. That was it. No name, no explanation. Zara barely slept that night. She kept thinking about Maxwell stealing her app, about watching Brendan take her job, about 15 failed interviews. By morning, she had made up her mind. She would go to the coffee shop. She would hear what this person had to say. The Greenway Coffee Shop was busy with morning customers. Zara ordered a small coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, and found the corner booth. It was empty. She sat down and waited. "Hello, Zara." A woman slid into the seat across from her. She had dark skin, short natural hair with a touch of gray, and sharp eyes behind black-rimmed glasses. She looked familiar. "Do I know you?" Zara asked. "Imani Brooks. I worked in legal at Platinum." Imani kept her voice low. 3 years ago, I was fired for asking too many questions." Now Zara remembered. Imani had always been quiet, moving through the hallways like a shadow. They had never really spoken. "What questions?" Zara asked. Imani opened her laptop. "About this," she turned the screen to show Zara a spreadsheet. It listed names, dates, and project titles. What am I looking at? Maxwell's pattern. He finds talented employees, usually women, usually black or brown. He waits until they create something valuable. Then he fires them and takes their work. Zara felt cold. How many? 17 in the last 5 years, including me. And now you. That's illegal. Imani laughed without humor. Of course it is. But Maxwell makes everyone sign ironclad NDAs. His legal team is the best money can buy. And who would believe us against him? Zara stared at her untouched coffee. So why tell me? What can I do? Because your app is different. Imani leaned forward. It's bigger than anything he's stolen before, and his timing couldn't be worse. What do you mean? Platinum is in trouble. Big trouble. Their stock is falling. Their reputation is taking hits. And Elara Ventures, their biggest investor, is looking for new blood. Zara had heard of Elara Ventures. They were one of the biggest investment firms in tech. Mrs. Chen runs Elara now, Imani continued. She's looking for companies with fresh ideas and ethical leadership. Companies like Platinum used to be, before Maxwell took over. I still don't see how this helps me. Imani smiled for the first time. Show me your app. Zara hesitated, then pulled out her flash drive. She plugged it into Imani's laptop and opened the Efficiency Pro files. Imani scrolled through the designs and code. Her eyes widened. This is even better than I thought. This could transform how tech companies operate. Maxwell thinks so too. That's why he stole it. But you created it. And I bet you have proof. Zara thought about it. I have early designs on my home computer, dated files, my research notes. I wrote everything down. Good. Imani closed the IFE laptop. Here's what we do. We start our own company. We build your app, the real version, not whatever garbage Brendan is coding. We pitch it to Elara Ventures. Start a company? I barely have enough money for next month's rent. I've been saving for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to strike back at Maxwell. Imani's eyes gleamed. This is it. I have enough to get us started. A small office, basic equipment. Zara shook her head. Even if we build it, why would Elara listen to us? We're nobodies. No, we're experts who got pushed out by a corrupt CEO. That's a story people love. And Mrs. Chen especially loves supporting women in tech. For the first time in weeks, Zara felt a spark of hope. But doubt quickly followed. What about Maxwell's lawyers? The moment we launch, they'll come after us. Let them try. Imani pulled out a folder. While I worked at Platinum, I collected evidence, emails, meeting recordings, things Maxwell never knew I had. She spread papers across the table, emails discussing how to handle fired employees, notes about claiming others' work as Maxwell's own, a plan for pushing out older staff to avoid paying retirement benefits. I was building a whistleblower case when they caught on and fired me. I keep it updated through contacts still inside. Maxwell thinks he's untouchable, but he's not. Zara stared at the evidence. You've been planning this for 3 years? I've been waiting for the right person with the right idea. You're it. Imani gathered the papers back into the folder. So, are you in? Zara thought about her dwindling bank account, about her parents who still thought she was a success, about Maxwell's smug face saying, "Nothing personal, Wilson." "What do we call our company?" she asked. Imani smiled. "I was thinking Nova Solutions, because we're rising from the ashes." That night, Zara and Imani worked in Zara's apartment until dawn. They outlined their business plan. They made lists of what they needed. They crafted their pitch for investors. 2 days later, they signed papers for a tiny office in a building far from Platinum's glass tower. The paint was peeling. The elevator creaked, but it was theirs. Zara used her last bit of savings to buy a new laptop. Imani brought in desks and chairs from her apartment. They set up a whiteboard and covered it with sticky notes and plans. For the next month, they barely slept. Zara refined her app, while Imani worked her contacts to set up a meeting with Elara. Ventures! They lived on cheap coffee and takeout noodles. What if this doesn't work? Zara asked one night, rubbing her tired eyes. Imani looked up from her spreadsheets. Then we go down fighting. Better than letting him win without a battle. Zara nodded. She turned back to her screen, where Efficiency Pro, now renamed Nova Optimizer, was taking shape. Better than before. Stronger. Like her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Imani's contact at Elara Ventures. "Mrs. Chen will see you next Tuesday." Zara's heart jumped to her throat. "Imani," she called. "We got the meeting." Imani rushed over, reading the text over Zara's shoulder. They looked at each other, then at their tiny office with its mismatched furniture and empty coffee cups. "1 week to prepare," Imani said. "1 week until we take our first step toward justice," Zara replied. They worked through the weekend, polishing their presentation, practicing their pitch. When Tuesday morning arrived, Zara put on her best blazer, the same one she'd worn the day Maxwell fired her. "Ready?" Imani asked as they stood outside Elara's sleek headquarters. Zara clutched her tablet with their presentation. "Ready?" Together, they walked through the doors. Elara Ventures occupied the top 5 floors of a downtown skyscraper. Unlike Platinum Tech's cold glass and steel, Elara's lobby felt warm, with wood panels and soft lighting. Plants grew in every corner. "Welcome to Elara Ventures," said the receptionist. "You must be Ms. Brooks and Ms. Wilson." They were led to a small waiting room. Through glass walls, Zara could see busy people hurrying between offices. Everyone looked important. "My hands won't stop shaking," Zara whispered, clutching her tablet. "Remember why we're here?" Imani replied. "Think about everyone Maxwell has hurt." A young man appeared at the door. "Mrs. Chen will see you now." They followed him down a hallway to a large conference room. Around a gleaming table sat 5 people in expensive suits, each with a tablet and a bottle of water. At the head of the table was Mrs. Chen. She was smaller than Zara had expected, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun. Her face was lined, but her eyes were sharp. She didn't smile as they entered. "Ms. Brooks, Ms. Wilson, please sit." Mrs. Chen gestured to 2 empty chairs. "You have 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Not the hour they had hoped for. Zara and Imani exchanged a quick glance. Imani spoke first. "Thank you for seeing us, Mrs. Chen. We're here to present Nova Solutions and our flagship product, Nova Optimizer." Mrs. Chen nodded slightly. "Proceed." Zara connected her tablet to the room's display system. Their presentation appeared on the wall screen. Her mouth felt dry. "Nova Optimizer is a revolutionary efficiency management system," she began. Her voice cracked. She took a quick sip of water and tried again. "Imagine knowing exactly where your company wastes time and money. Imagine spotting problems before they grow. Imagine saving millions by making small changes." The board members looked bored already. They had probably heard 100 pitches this week. Zara took a deep breath and decided to go off script. "Let me show you what Nova Optimizer can do with real data." She pulled up a new screen. "This is Apex Industries, a mid-sized tech company similar to many in your portfolio." She hadn't told Imani about this part. She had stayed up all night analyzing one of Elara's public companies using her app. Apex spends 42% of its budget on project management. But look here, she zoomed in on a chart. 20% of that is wasted on unnecessary meetings and duplicate efforts. The board members leaned forward slightly. Nova Optimizer identified 3 critical workflow issues. Zara highlighted them on the screen. By fixing just these 3 things, Apex could save $8 million annually. Mrs. Chen removed her glasses. "How did you get Apex's internal data?" "I didn't," Zara said. "I used publicly available information and Nova's prediction algorithms. Imagine what the app could find with full access to company data." She moved to the next slide. "Now, let's look at Platinum Tech." Imani shot her a warning look. This definitely wasn't in their plan. "Platinum's stock has dropped 18% in 3 months," Zara continued. "Nova Optimizer shows why." She displayed a chart of Platinum's declining performance alongside key events, layoffs, delayed products, executive bonuses. Their problems aren't market forces. They're leadership failures. Zara highlighted a particular spike downward. "This was the day after I was fired as head of product development." The room grew very quiet. One board member whispered to another. Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. "You worked at Platinum?" "Until recently," Zara confirmed. "I was developing a system similar to Nova Optimizer for them. After I was fired, they took my work. Their version will fail because they don't understand the core algorithms. I do. I created them." Mrs. Chen leaned back in her chair. "Bold claim, bold strategy to tell us this." "We believe in transparency," Imani cut in smoothly. "And we believe Nova Solutions represents the future of business optimization. We're seeking $2 million in startup funding in exchange for 15% equity. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Mrs. Chen spoke. "Show me the code." Zara hesitated. The code was their only asset. If she showed it and they declined? "The core algorithm," Mrs. Chen clarified. "Just a sample." Zara pulled up a section of code, carefully chosen to show their expertise without revealing too much. Mrs. Chen studied it, then nodded to a young man at her side. "Kevin?" He examined the code, then whispered something to Mrs. Chen. She nodded. "Ms. Wilson, Ms. Brooks, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." Just like that, it was over. They were escorted back to the lobby. Was that good or bad? Zara asked once they were alone in the elevator. "I don't know," Imani admitted. "You went way off script. I had to try something." They weren't connecting with the standard pitch. Outside, they walked silently toward the bus stop. The meeting had lasted exactly 14 minutes, 1 minute short of their allotted time. It felt like failure. Zara's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Ms. Wilson? Please hold for Mrs. Chen." Zara grabbed Imani's arm. "It's Chen," she whispered. "Ms. Wilson." Mrs. Chen's voice was crisp. "Your presentation was unusual." "Thank you." Zara wasn't sure if that was a compliment. "We receive hundreds of pitches each month. Most are forgettable. Yours was not." A pause. "We're prepared to offer you $1 million in seed funding for 20% equity." Zara nearly dropped the phone. She put it on speaker so Imani could hear. That's half what we asked for more equity than we offered," Imani said carefully. "Correct," Mrs. Chen replied. "You're unproven. It's a fair offer." Zara and Imani looked at each other. $1 million would get them running, but just barely. "We accept," Zara said before she could overthink it. "Good. My team will send the paperwork." "One more thing, Ms. Wilson." "Yes?" "One more thing, Ms. Wilson," Mrs. Chen repeated. "We're also looking at buying a controlling interest in Platinum Tech. Their recent performance makes them vulnerable. You worked there. What's your assessment?" Zara felt a surge of something powerful. Part hope, part revenge. Their leadership is the problem. Maxwell Stone cares more about his image than his company. He steals ideas instead of nurturing talent. He fires his best people and promotes yes men. "I see." Mrs. Chen's voice revealed nothing. "Thank you for your candor. We'll be in touch about the paperwork." The call ended. Zara and Imani stood on the sidewalk, staring at each other. "Did that just happen?" Zara asked. "We got the money," Imani confirmed. "But, more importantly, Ilara is looking at Platinum," Zara finished. "This could be bigger than we planned." For the first time since being fired, Zara smiled a real smile. The path back to Platinum and to justice was opening before her. 3 weeks later, Nova Solutions moved into a real office. It wasn't fancy, just a converted loft with exposed brick walls. But it had new computers, reliable internet, and a coffee maker that didn't break down every other day. Zara hired 2 programmers who had also been fired from Platinum. They jumped at the chance to work with her again. Imani brought on a young lawyer who specialized in tech startups. The tiny team worked day and night to perfect Nova Optimizer. "We launch in 2 weeks," Zara announced one morning. "Marketing starts tomorrow. I want everyone in the tech world talking about us." Imani looked worried. "That's pushing it. And what about Maxwell's lawyers? The moment they see Nova Optimizer..." "Let them come," Zara said. "I've documented everything. My original code, my design notebooks, time-stamped backups. If Maxwell wants a legal fight, we'll give him one. That afternoon, Zara's phone buzzed with a news alert. Platinum Tech announces new efficiency platform, the headline read. Imani leaned over Zara's shoulder to read. They're rushing to beat us to market. Zara scrolled through the article. Platinum Efficiency would launch in 10 days. Maxwell Stone was quoted calling it revolutionary and entirely developed by our in-house team. We need to move faster, Zara said. Can we launch in 1 week? The team worked around the clock. They ordered takeout and slept on office couches. By the end of the week, Nova Optimizer was ready. The launch was small but successful. Tech blogs praised the app's clean design and powerful features. Small companies signed up for trials. Within days, their user base grew from 0 to 500. Then came the cease and desist letter from Platinum Tech. They claim we stole their intellectual property, Imani said, reading the legal document. They want us to shut down immediately or face a lawsuit. Zara wasn't surprised. Let's call Mrs. Chen. It's time for Phase 2. Meanwhile, at Platinum Tech, things were falling apart. Maxwell stormed into the executive conference room, slamming the door behind him. Why is Nova Optimizer getting better reviews than our product? Why are we losing customers to them? Brendan shifted nervously in his chair. Their algorithm seems more advanced than what we have. We need more time to... We don't have more time, Maxwell shouted. Our stock dropped another 5% this morning. The board is asking questions. Fix it! As Maxwell ranted, his assistant knocked timidly on the door. What? Maxwell snapped. Sir, Ilara Ventures called. Mrs. Chen wants an emergency meeting. With the board tomorrow. Maxwell's face paled. Ilara owned 30% of Platinum Tech. If they were calling an emergency board meeting, tell them I'll be there, he said quietly. The next day, Platinum's board members gathered in their gleaming conference room. Mrs. Chen sat at one end of the table, flanked by her team. Maxwell sat at the other end, trying to look confident. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Mrs. Chen began. Ilara Ventures has concerns about Platinum's recent performance and leadership. Temporary setbacks, Maxwell insisted. Our new efficiency platform will turn things around. Platinum efficiency? Mrs. Chen nodded. Let's discuss that. She opened a folder and spread documents across the table. These are original design documents for Nova Optimizer, created by Zara Wilson while she was employed here. And these, she laid down more papers, are your in-house designs for Platinum efficiency. Notice any similarities? The board members leaned forward, examining the papers. The designs were nearly identical. This is outrageous, Maxwell sputtered. Wilson stole our intellectual property. Interesting theory, Mrs. Chen said calmly. But we have evidence showing you accessed Ms. Wilson's files after firing her. We have timestamps, server logs, and testimony from current employees. The blood drained from Maxwell's face. Who told you that? It was Darius Jones, wasn't it? I'll have him fired immediately. The board chairman cleared his throat. Maxwell, you're not helping your case. Mrs. Chen continued, as if there had been no interruption. Ilara Ventures is prepared to make an offer for a controlling interest in Platinum Tech. 65% ownership. However, we have conditions. What conditions? The chairman asked. New leadership. Mrs. Chen looked directly at Maxwell. Mr. Stone would step down immediately. Maxwell jumped to his feet. This is a hostile takeover. I built this company. You built it on stolen ideas, a new voice said. Every head turned. Zara Wilson stood in the doorway, with Imani Brooks beside her. Maxwell's face turned purple. Who let them in? Security. I invited them, Mrs. Chen said. Please continue, Ms. Wilson. Zara walked to the table and placed a flash drive in front of each board member. This contains evidence of systematic theft of intellectual property at Platinum Tech. 17 cases over 5 years, all documented, all involving employees who were fired shortly after creating valuable work. The board members looked stunned. This is absurd, Maxwell sputtered. You can't believe... We've verified everything, Mrs. Chen cut in. Ilara's legal team has been working with Ms. Brooks, who kept meticulous records during her time in Platinum's legal department. The board chairman picked up one of the flash drives. Why bring this to us now? Why not go public? Because Platinum Tech used to stand for something good, Zara said. Before Maxwell, it was a place where innovation thrived. It could be again, with the right leadership. The chairman turned to Mrs. Chen. What exactly are you proposing? Ilara buys controlling interest. Maxwell steps down. We install new leadership focused on innovation and ethical business practices. We merge Nova Solutions with Platinum to create a stronger company. The room fell silent. Then the chairman spoke again. We need to discuss this privately. Ms. Wilson, Ms. Brooks, Mr. Stone, please step outside. The hallway was tense. Maxwell stood as far from Zara and Imani as possible, furiously texting on his phone. 20 minutes passed. Then the boardroom door opened. We've reached a decision, the chairman announced. We're accepting Ilara's offer. Maxwell's phone clattered to the floor. You can't do this. I'm the CEO. Not anymore, the chairman said. Security will escort you to clean out your office. As Maxwell was led away, still shouting threats, the chairman turned to Zara. Mrs. Chen speaks highly of you, Ms. Wilson. The board would like to discuss your role in the new company structure. 1 week later, Zara sat in a conference room at Platinum headquarters. The merger between Nova Solutions and Platinum Tech was nearly complete. All they needed was a new CEO. Mrs. Chen entered the room, followed by Imani and the board members. After careful consideration, Mrs. Chen announced, "We believe the company needs leadership that understands both innovation and integrity." She turned to Zara. "Ms. Wilson, we would like to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer of the merged company." The room spun around Zara. "Me? CEO? You created the product that will save this company," Mrs. Chen said. "You stood up against injustice at great personal risk. Who better to lead Platinum forward?" Zara looked at Imani, who nodded encouragingly. "I accept," Zara said, her voice stronger than she felt. "On one condition." "Name it," said Mrs. Chen. "We rename the company. Platinum Tech died when Maxwell corrupted it. We need a fresh start." Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. "What did you have in mind?" Zara thought for a moment. "Wilson Innovations." "Bold choice," the chairman said. "I like it." As the meeting ended, Zara remained seated, letting reality sink in. Just 6 months ago, she had walked out of this building with a cardboard box, fired unfairly. Now she was returning as CEO. The path to justice had led her right back where she started, but everything had changed. 6 months later, Zara stood in the lobby of the same glass tower where she'd once been fired. Workers hurried past, glancing curiously at her. Some looked away quickly. Others smiled nervously. They all knew who she was now. Zara smoothed her new blazer, not the same one she'd worn when Maxwell fired her. That old blazer was packed away as a reminder. Today she wore a bold red one that made her feel powerful. The security guard nodded respectfully. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson." "Good morning, Thomas," she replied, remembering his name from her old days here. Thomas looked surprised that she remembered. His smile became more genuine. Zara took a deep breath and walked to the elevator. This time, she pressed the button for the top floor without hesitation. Floor 25, the CEO's floor. Her "Floor now!" The elevator doors opened onto plush carpet. The walls still displayed awards, but Maxwell's photos were gone, replaced by the new Wilson Innovations logo, a rising sun over a stylized W. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," said a young woman at the reception desk. Her name tag read Mia. "Good morning, Mia. How are you today?" "Fine, thank you." Mia seemed startled by the question. "Your office is ready." The board sent over the quarterly reports for review. Zara nodded and walked toward the large glass doors at the end of the hall. She paused with her hand on the door. Last time she stood here, she had been nervous about showing Maxwell her app idea. Now she was about to enter as CEO. The office was transformed. Maxwell's dark leather and chrome were gone, replaced by warm woods and comfortable seating. Large windows let in natural light. Plants added life to the corners. "Do you like it?" Imani asked, appearing at her side. As the new chief operating officer, Imani had overseen the office redesign. "It's perfect," Zara said. "Not a trace of Maxwell left." "Well, almost none." Imani pointed to the desk. A small envelope sat in the center, with Zara written on it in Maxwell's handwriting. "Where did this come from?" Zara asked, picking it up. "Security found it when they were clearing out his personal safe. He must have left it there before he was escorted out." Zara turned the envelope over in her hands. "Should I open it?" "That's up to you," Imani said. "But whatever it says, remember, you won. He lost." Zara slid her finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of expensive stationery. The note was short. "You won't last a week. M." She laughed and crumpled the paper. "Still as charming as ever." Imani took the crumpled note and dropped it in the recycling bin. "And still wrong. Ready to get started?" The morning passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. The company's situation was worse than the board had admitted. Maxwell had left behind a mess of canceled contracts, angry clients, and unfinished projects. "Our biggest client, Tech Forward, is threatening to leave," explained the head of sales. "They say the quality has dropped in the last year." "Call them," Zara said. "Set up a meeting. I'll go personally." The finance team reported next. "We're bleeding money on the Rapid Connect project. It's 6 months behind schedule. I want a full review by tomorrow," Zara ordered. "We either fix it or cancel it." By afternoon, her head was spinning with problems. She had known turning the company around wouldn't be easy, but the magnitude of the challenge was becoming clear. "Ms. Wilson," Mia called from the doorway. "It's almost time for the all-company meeting." The company-wide gathering had been Zara's idea. Every employee, from janitors to executives, was invited to the large atrium to meet the new CEO. As Zara took the stage, hundreds of eyes watched her. Some faces showed hope. Others showed doubt. Most showed fear. In the wake of Maxwell's firing, rumors of more layoffs had spread. Zara stepped up to the microphone, suddenly nervous. She had practiced her speech all week, but now the words seemed to evaporate from her mind. She looked out at the crowd and spotted a familiar face. Darius, from IT, who had risked his job to tell her about Maxwell stealing her app. He gave her a small thumbs up. "Good afternoon," Zara began. "Many of you don't know me. Some of you do. 6 months ago, I was fired from this company after 8 years of service. A murmur ran through the crowd. "I know what it's like to be thrown." "Away," Zara continued, finding her voice. "To be told you don't matter. That stops today." She gripped the sides of the podium. "Wilson Innovations is not platinum tech. We will not succeed by stealing ideas or discarding talented people. We will succeed by building something better, together." The crowd grew quiet, listening intently. There will be changes, hard choices. But here's my promise to you. Every decision will be made with transparency. No one will be fired without cause. Every voice will be heard. Zara saw hope replacing fear on many faces. "I can't fix everything Maxwell broke in one day, but I can. Start by fixing how we treat each other. My door is open. My email is open. If you have ideas, share them. If you see problems, report them. This is your company too." As she finished her speech, the atrium filled with applause. Not thunderous at first, but growing stronger. People began to stand. By the end, most of the room was on their feet. Backer. In her office later, Zara stared out at the city below. The sun was setting, painting the skyline in gold and pink. She had survived her first day as CEO. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "So proud of you, baby girl," your father cried when he saw the news. Another buzz. "Imani, good speech. The team leads want to meet tomorrow to discuss your open-door policy." A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Victor Reed, Maxwell's former right-hand man and vice president of operations. Somehow, he had survived the takeover. "Ms. Wilson," he said smoothly, "I wanted to personally welcome you." Zara studied him, tall, perfectly dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you, Victor. I appreciate that. I've been with the company 15 years. I'd be happy to help you adjust to your new role." The condescension in his voice was subtle, but unmistakable. "I'm sure your experience will be valuable," Zara replied evenly. "I look forward to seeing your department's performance review tomorrow." Victor's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, though I must warn you, transitions like this can be challenging. Not everyone adapts well to new leadership, especially when that leadership is different." Zara met his gaze steadily. "Different how, exactly?" Victor backpedaled. "New to the position, of course. Being CEO requires certain qualities. I guess we'll find out if I have them," Zara said, her voice cool. "Good night, Victor." After he left, Zara sank into her chair. Maxwell might be gone, but his influence remained. The real challenge was just beginning. Leading Wilson Innovations proved harder than Zara expected. The company was larger and more complex than her small Nova Solutions team. Old habits died hard among the staff. Some embraced the changes she brought, others resisted. "The developers are refusing to use the new project management system," Imani reported one morning, 3 weeks into Zara's leadership. "They say it's too different from what they're used to." "The system they're used to is what put us in this mess," Zara replied, rubbing her temples. She hadn't slept well in days. "Schedule a demo. Show them how it will make their jobs easier." Her open-door policy had backfired somewhat. So many people wanted to talk to her that she barely had time to think. But canceling it would send the wrong message. Zara's biggest victory came when she announced her Fair Pay initiative. Every employee would receive equal pay for equal work, regardless of gender or race. The Human Resources team audited all salaries and adjusted them accordingly. Some managers complained about the cost. But when Zara cut executive bonuses to fund it, most employees cheered. She won many hearts that day, but not all. Victor Reed remained her biggest problem. As vice president of operations, he controlled many key projects. In management meetings, he questioned every decision she made. "With all due respect, Ms. Wilson," he would begin, his voice smooth as oil, "that approach seems unorthodox." Gertrude. First, Zara tried to win him over. She invited him to share his expertise. She considered his suggestions carefully, but nothing changed his attitude. Then she overheard him in the break room, speaking to another executive. "She only got this job because she's black," Victor said quietly. "Ilara wanted their diversity higher. She'll crash and burn, and then they'll bring in someone with real experience." Zara stepped back around the corner, her face burning. She wanted to confront him, to fire him on the spot, but she took a deep breath instead. If she acted emotionally, she would only prove him right in the eyes of others. That night, she called Imani. "I need to build a stronger team," Zara said. "People I can trust." "I've been thinking the same thing," Imani agreed. "Maxwell's old guard won't change. We need fresh blood." Zara began to look for talented people who had been overlooked or pushed aside under Maxwell's leadership. She reached out to former employees who had been unfairly fired. She brought back Maria Chen, a brilliant engineer who had been passed over for promotion 3 times despite her innovations. She recruited Derek Washington, who had left after Maxwell took credit for his marketing campaign. Slowly, Zara built a circle of loyal, talented leaders. Together, they started to turn the company around. The Nova Optimizer app, now the company's flagship product, gained more clients each week. Revenue began to climb. The stock price stabilized. Just as things seemed to improve, disaster struck. "We've been hacked," Darius reported, bursting into Zara's office one Tuesday morning. "Someone got into our system last night." "How bad is it?" Zara asked, already reaching for her phone. "Bad. They took confidential product designs, client information, financial data. Within hours, the stolen information began appearing online. Tech blogs reported on Wilson Innovations' security failure. Clients called in a panic, threatening to leave. The board called an emergency meeting. "This is a crisis of leadership," Victor announced, standing before the board members. "Ms. Wilson's inexperience has left us vulnerable." "The security protocols were established long before I became CEO," Zara countered. "In fact, my team was in the process of updating them." "Clearly not fast enough," Victor replied. His smile was like a shark's. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider the company's direction." By the end of the day, 3 major clients had canceled their contracts. The stock dropped 15%. News outlets ran stories questioning Zara's ability to lead. As Zara left the office that night, she found a printout on her desk. It was an email from a rival firm offering Victor Reed a senior position. The subject line read, "After the transition." Victor was planning his exit, but only after he helped push Zara out. She drove home in a daze. Rain pounded on her windshield, matching her dark mood. She had come so far, had fought so hard. Was it all about to fall apart? When she reached her apartment, a familiar car was parked outside. Imani sat inside, waiting. "We need to talk," Imani said as Zara got in. "I've been doing some digging. The hack wasn't random." Zara stared at her. "What do you mean?" The attackers knew exactly what to look for and where to find it. Someone gave them access. "Victor?" Zara breathed. "I don't have proof yet," Imani cautioned. "But I found something else. Strange emails between Victor and Maxwell. They've been in contact this whole time." Zara's mind raced. Maxwell wants revenge. He's using Victor to destroy what we've built. There's more, Imani said. I think they're planning something bigger. Something to do with the company's ownership. Rain drummed on the car roof as Zara thought. She had come too far to lose now. If Victor and Maxwell wanted a fight, they would get one. We need allies, Zara said finally. People inside the company who can help us find proof. I might know a few, Imani replied, but we need to be careful. If Victor suspects, we're on to him. He'll destroy the evidence, Zara finished, and us with it. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She paced her apartment, thinking. Victor had years of connections at the company. He knew where all the bodies were buried, so to speak, but she had something he didn't. Something Maxwell never had either. The trust of the people who actually did the work. The next morning, she came to the office with a plan. She didn't know if it would work, but she had to try, because this wasn't just about saving her job anymore. It was about saving the company she had fought so hard to rebuild. Zara arrived at the office before dawn the next day. The building was quiet, with only security guards and early morning cleaners around. She needed time to think without interruptions. She pulled out a notepad and began to list people she could trust. Imani, of course, Darius from IT, Maria and Derek, whom she had recently brought back. But she needed more allies, especially people who knew the company's inner workings. Who else had Maxwell mistreated? Who had noticed problems but been told to stay quiet? Zara remembered Lin Jiang, a quiet programmer who always ate lunch alone, in the break room. Lin had developed several key features for their products, but never received credit. Maxwell had once mocked her accent in front of the entire development team. Then there was Jackson Rivera from marketing. His creative campaigns had won awards, but Maxwell had shot down his best ideas, calling them too urban. Jackson had been passed over for promotion 3 times, and Priya Sharma from finance. She had questioned some irregular spending last year and been removed from the budget committee. Zara had reinstated her, but they hadn't spoken much since. These were the people she needed: talented, observant, and with good reason to want the company to succeed under new leadership. Zara sent them each a private message. Need to discuss. Something important. My office, 7 p.m. Tell no one. All day she maintained her normal schedule. She attended meetings, reviewed reports, and even had lunch with Victor in the executive dining room. She smiled and nodded as he explained why her latest initiative wouldn't work. All the while, her mind was racing with plans. At 6:30, Zara asked her assistant to go home early. "You've been working too hard," she said kindly. "Get some rest." By 7, her unlikely team had gathered. Lynn, nervous and quiet in the corner. Jackson, suspicious but curious. Priya, with her ever-present spreadsheets. Darius, Maria, Derek, and Imani completed the circle. Zara closed the door and lowered the blinds. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room." She told them everything. Victor's connection to Maxwell, the suspicious emails, the too convenient hack. As she spoke, she watched their faces. Shock, anger, and finally, determination. "So that's why the security update I suggested was delayed," Darius said. Victor kept finding reasons to push it back. Lynn nodded. "And last week, I saw him using a flash drive on his computer. Company policy says no external drives." "He's been meeting with investors," Priya added quietly. "Off the books. I noticed because the lunch receipts came from restaurants where Maxwell used to take potential buyers." Jackson leaned forward. "But what's the end game? What does Victor get out of crashing the company?" Imani explained her theory. Maxwell and Victor want to tank our stock price, make us look incompetent and unstable. Then they or their partners can buy the company cheap. A hostile takeover? Priya murmured. Classic. Exactly, Zara said. But we can't prove it yet. That's why I need your help. Together, they formed a plan. Darius would monitor network activity, looking for unusual access. Lynn would review code changes, searching for backdoors or vulnerabilities. Priya would track financial irregularities. Jackson would watch for leaked information in marketing materials. We meet here every night, Zara decided. Report what you find. But during the day, act normal. If Victor suspects we're onto him, we're dead in the water, Maria finished. They worked in secret for a week. Each night, they gathered in Zara's office after hours, sharing what they had discovered. Priya found unusual transfers to offshore accounts. Darius tracked login attempts from Victor's computer to secure servers he shouldn't have accessed. Lynn discovered code changes that made their systems vulnerable, changes approved by Victor's team. Jackson uncovered something even more disturbing. These press releases, he said, spreading papers across Zara's desk. They're drafts announcing Maxwell Stone as the new CEO of our biggest competitor. When are they dated? Zara asked. Next month, Jackson replied grimly. The pieces were falling into place. But they still needed concrete proof, linking Victor and Maxwell directly to the hack and the sabotage. On the 8th night, Darius burst into the office, his face flushed with excitement. I found something, he announced. Victor's been using a private email server to communicate with Maxwell. I managed to get access. He opened his laptop and showed them dozens of emails between Victor and Maxwell. Their plan was laid out in stark detail. Tank Wilson Innovations. Buy it back cheap. Take it private. Fire everyone who had supported Zara. This is the smoking gun, Imani said, scrolling through the messages. But how did you get these? Darius looked uncomfortable. Let's just say I used some skills the company doesn't know I have. Would these hold up legally? Derek asked. If they were obtained without authorization. Maybe not in court, Zara admitted. But the board doesn't need court-level evidence. They need enough to see what's happening. The night before the board meeting, they gathered all their evidence. Login records, financial transfers, altered code, the draft press releases, and printouts of the emails with the most damning parts highlighted. Zara looked at her, unlikely. Team of allies. In just over a week, they had accomplished what seemed impossible. They had saved the company, if the board would listen. I can't thank you all enough, she said. No matter what happens tomorrow, I won't forget what you've done. Lynn, who rarely spoke, cleared her throat. Under Maxwell, I was invisible. You saw me. You listened. That's worth fighting for. The others nodded in agreement. Get some rest, Zara told them. Tomorrow will be intense. After they left, Zara and Imani stayed behind, reviewing their presentation one last time. Are you ready for this? Imani asked. Victor won't go down without a fight. Zara thought about how far she had come, from being fired and humiliated to becoming CEO, from standing alone against Maxwell to building this alliance of talented people. I'm ready, she said. We all are. The next morning, Zara dressed carefully in her boldest suit, a bright royal blue that made her feel invincible. She gathered her files and headed to the boardroom. As she walked in, Victor was already there, chatting easily with board members. His confidence faltered slightly when he saw her determined expression. Good morning, everyone, Zara said, taking her place at the head of the table. Before we begin the regular agenda, there's an urgent matter we need to discuss. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up sharply. Maxwell had texted him. "What's happening?" The battle for Wilson. Innovations was about to begin. The boardroom was tense as the meeting started. Board members shuffled papers and checked their phones, unaware of the storm brewing between Zara and Victor. Victor spoke first. "Before we begin, I'd like to address some concerns about recent company performance." He stood and walked to the presentation screen, clicking through slides showing declining numbers. Stock prices, client retention, market share. Each chart pointed downward. "Since the leadership change 6 months ago," Victor said smoothly, "we've seen troubling trends. The recent security breach cost us 3 major clients. Our new products are behind schedule, and our stock has dropped nearly 20%. Board members murmured worriedly. One leaned over to whisper to another. "The question we must ask," Victor continued, his voice grave, "is whether our current direction is sustainable, whether our current leadership has the experience necessary to guide us through these troubled waters." He looked directly at Zara, his meaning clear. Several board members followed his gaze. "Thank you for that presentation, Victor," Zara said calmly when he finished. "It raises important issues I'd like to address." She stood and moved to the front of the room. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "The problems Mr. Reed outlined are real. What he failed to mention is their cause." Zara plugged in her flash drive, the same one she'd had the day Maxwell fired her. It felt like a lifetime ago. 2 weeks ago, our systems were hacked. Sensitive information was stolen. We lost clients and trust. She pulled up her first slide. "This is a log of network access the night of the breach." The screen showed a list of timestamps and user IDs. One was highlighted, VR Reed, admin. Mr. Reed accessed secure servers at 11:42 p.m., using admin privileges he shouldn't have had. Victor's face flushed. "That's absurd. I was home that night. Someone must have used my credentials." "Perhaps," Zara agreed, "but that doesn't explain this." She showed emails between Victor and Maxwell discussing company secrets and planning strategy. Dates matched the leaked information perfectly. "Or this," Zara continued, displaying financial records. "Unusual transfers to offshore accounts, approved by Mr. Reed, totaling over $3 million. The board chairman leaned forward. "Where did you get this information, Ms. Wilson?" "My team has been investigating since the breach. We have evidence that Mr. Reed has been working with Maxwell Stone to deliberately damage our company." Victor shot to his feet. "This is a witch hunt. She's fabricating evidence because she can't handle criticism." "Am I fabricating this too?" Zara asked quietly, pulling up a draft press release dated for the following month. It announced Maxwell Stone as the new CEO of Trinity Tech, their biggest competitor. Or these emails discussing plans to buy Wilson Innovations stock once the price drops low enough. The board members stared at the screen in shock. Victor's face had gone from red to white. This is taken out of context," he stammered. "I was conducting research on our competitors." The board chairman's voice was ice cold. "By sharing our confidential information with Maxwell Stone? By sabotaging our systems?" "You don't understand," Victor said desperately. "Stone has a better vision for this company. He built it from nothing. Wilson is an outsider who got lucky." The room fell silent at his outburst. Victor seemed to realize his mistake too late. Zara looked him in the eye. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Reed." The chairman cleared his throat. "I think we've heard enough. Mr. Reed, please wait outside while the board discusses this matter." Victor stormed out, slamming the door behind him. When he was gone, the chairman turned to Zara. "This evidence is disturbing. Why didn't you come to us sooner?" "We needed proof," Zara explained. "And frankly, I wasn't sure who else might be involved." The board members exchanged glances. One elderly woman spoke up. "I never trusted Stone. Too slick by half. But I didn't see this coming." "None of us did," the chairman admitted. "The question is, what do we do now?" Zara took a deep breath. This was her moment. "You can fire me if you want," she said. "I know the numbers look bad, but before you decide, I'd like to show you one more thing." She pulled up a new presentation, her plan to save the company. It detailed how Nova Optimizer could be expanded into a full suite of products, how they could rebuild client trust, how they could lead the industry in ethical business practices while still turning a profit. "This is the future of Wilson Innovations," Zara said. "Not looking back to Maxwell's way of doing things, but moving forward with transparency and innovation." For the next 20 minutes, she outlined her vision. The board listened without interruption. When she finished, there was a long silence. Finally, the chairman spoke. "We need to vote. All in favor of dismissing Victor Reed and pursuing legal action for corporate espionage and sabotage?" Every hand went up. All in favor of continuing with Ms. Wilson as CEO, implementing her recovery plan. One by one, hands raised. Some quickly, others more hesitantly. But in the end, every board member supported her. "The vote is unanimous," the chairman announced. "Ms. Wilson remains CEO. Security will escort Mr. Reed from the building immediately." Relief washed over Zara like a wave. She had done it. She had saved her job and the company. Outside the boardroom, Victor waited, pacing nervously. When Zara emerged with the chairman, his face fell. "You're making a mistake," he hissed at the board members. "She'll run this company into the ground." "Security is waiting to escort you out, Mr. Reed," the chairman said coldly. "Your company accounts have been frozen. Don't take anything from your office." As Victor was led away, he turned back to Zara. "This isn't over," he snarled. Zara smiled slightly. "For you, it is." Back in her office, Zara closed the door and finally let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed with texts from her team, waiting anxiously for news. "Victory," she texted back. "Reed is gone." Congratulations flooded in. She would thank them all properly later. They had saved the company together. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Maxwell Stone would be getting the news that his plan had failed, that the woman he had fired and underestimated had beaten him again. For the first time since becoming CEO, Zara felt like she truly belonged in this office, in this role. The company was hers now, in a way it hadn't been before, and she knew exactly where to take it next. 1 year later, Wilson Innovations had transformed completely. The glass tower still stood tall in the city skyline, but inside, everything had changed. Zara walked through the open-concept main floor, greeting employees by name. Gone were the closed offices and secretive meetings of Maxwell's era. Now teams work together in bright, collaborative spaces. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," called Lynn, now head of software development. Her quiet brilliance had flourished once given room to grow. "Morning, Lynn. How's the new app coming?" "Ahead of schedule," Lynn replied with a small smile. "Beta testers love it." Wherever Zara looked, she saw success. Jackson had revamped their marketing, creating campaigns that showed real people using their products to solve problems. Priya had streamlined their finances, cutting waste while increasing employee benefits. Darius had built security systems so strong that tech magazines called them unbreakable. The Nova Optimizer, now expanded into a full suite of business tools, had become the industry standard. Companies around the world used Wilson Innovations products to improve efficiency and reduce costs. Most importantly, the company culture had changed. People from all backgrounds got promoted based on talent, not connections. Ideas mattered more than office politics. Workers were happy, and it showed in the quality of their work. Zara rode the elevator to her office on the top floor. She had kept it simple and welcoming, with comfortable seating for visitors and large windows that let in natural light. Sitting at her desk, she reviewed the latest financial reports. The company stock had doubled in the past year. Profits were up 60%. Their client list included some of the biggest names in business. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Imani, holding a newspaper. "Have you seen this?" Imani asked, laying the paper on Zara's desk. The headline read, "Former Platinum Tech CEO Maxwell Stone indicted for fraud." Zara scanned the article. Maxwell was facing charges for financial crimes committed during his time at Platinum. Evidence suggested he had been stealing from the company for years. "They found offshore accounts," Imani explained, "millions of dollars hidden away. The investigation started after Victor Reed made a plea deal." "Victor turned on Maxwell?" Zara asked, surprised. "Apparently, to save himself from prison. He gave prosecutors everything." Zara put down the newspaper. She felt no joy at Maxwell's downfall, only a quiet sense that justice had finally come. She opened her desk drawer and placed the article inside. One chapter, closed. She turned back to Imani. "What's on the agenda today?" "Mrs. Chen from Elara Ventures will be here at 11. She wants to discuss expanding our global presence. Since the showdown with Victor, Elara had increased their investment in Wilson Innovations. Mrs. Chen had become one of Zara's strongest supporters and mentors." "I'll be ready," Zara promised. After Imani left, Zara stood by the window, looking out at the city below. The view reminded her of how far she had come. From being fired in this very building to running it. From carrying her possessions out in a cardboard box to having her name on the company. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Just saw your interview in Business Weekly. So proud of you. Dad says to tell you he always knew you'd change the world. Dinner on Sunday?" Zara smiled and texted back a quick, "Yes." Her parents had been her rock through everything. They deserved to share in her success. Another text came in, this one from Imani. "Don't forget dinner with the team tonight. We're celebrating Jackson's award!" The reminder made Zara happy. Her core team had become like family. They still worked hard, but they celebrated their wins together too. At exactly 11, Mrs. Chen arrived. She was as elegant and formidable as ever, though her smile was warmer than when they'd first met. "Zara," she said, taking a seat across from the desk. "Wilson Innovations continues to impress." "Thank you. We've been working hard." "It shows." Mrs. Chen placed a folder on the desk. "I have a proposition for you." Zara opened the folder to find proposal documents for a new division of Elara Ventures, a global technology initiative spanning 3 continents. "We're expanding," Mrs. Chen explained, "creating a network of ethical tech companies that work together. We need someone with vision to lead it." Zara looked up from the papers. "You want me to leave Wilson Innovations?" "We want you to take Wilson Innovations to the next level. As global director, you would oversee not just this company, but help shape technology policy worldwide." It was an incredible offer. More power, more influence, a chance to create change on an even bigger scale. Zara's phone buzzed with another text. She glanced down to see Imani's reminder. "Don't forget dinner with the team tonight." The simple message made her pause. She looked around her office, thinking of the people who had stood by her, who had fought alongside her, who believed in her vision. "I'm honored, Mrs. Chen," Zara said finally. "Truly. But I'm exactly where I need to be." Mrs. Chen studied her face, then nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that. But the offer remains open, should you change your mind." After Mrs. Chen left, Zara sat quietly, reflecting on her decision. The global position would have brought more prestige, but what she had built here mattered more. She opened her desk drawer to put away Mrs. Chen's proposal and saw the newspaper article about Maxwell. Justice had been served. She had won. As Zara prepared to leave for the day, her assistant brought in one last piece of mail. "This came for you," he said, handing her a heavy cream envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper and a small brass key. The note was typed, not handwritten. "You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story. Maxwell and I were protecting the company from the truth. The key opens safe deposit box, number 347, at First National Bank. What you find there will change everything. Some secrets should stay buried." The note was signed simply, "A friend." Zara turned the key over in her hand, studying its worn teeth and old-fashioned design. Who had sent this? Victor? One of Maxwell's other allies? Or someone else entirely? Should she look? Or was this another trap? A final attempt to undermine her confidence. She slipped the key into her pocket. Some questions could wait until tomorrow. For now, she had a team dinner to attend, a celebration of their success and friendship. But as she turned off the lights in her office, the weight of the key felt heavy in her pocket. A small seed of doubt planted itself in her mind. What if there was something she didn't know? What if her greatest victory was built on a lie she couldn't even imagine? Zara shook her head and stepped into the elevator. Whatever secret lay in that safe deposit box, she would face it. She had overcome every obstacle so far. She had turned a firing into a triumph. She had taken control of her own story. If there was more to that story, she was ready to learn it. But as the elevator descended, the key seemed to grow heavier in her pocket. And for the first time in months, Zara felt a flicker of uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring. Where are you listening from? Drop your location in the comments so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed Zara's journey from fired employee to CEO, please hit that like button to help spread this story of perseverance and triumph. Your support means everything and helps others find content like this. And don't miss the video appearing on your screen right now for another powerful story that I know you'll love just as much. Click it now to continue your storytelling experience. Remember, kindness costs nothing but means everything. Thanks for being part of our community.